Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today I'm in a very special room. It's a hi-fi room. You usually see these rooms in Tokyo, Japan. Am I correct with that?
Correct.
And you guys have brought some flavor here to Seattle. I'm with a returning guest, Supreme LaRock, as well as two people that I haven't had on the show before. You guys are the founders of Shibuya here in Ballard. And I'd like to start by just getting to know, how do you guys all know each other?
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
I've worked with these guys for years, probably 2 decades, just because they've been in the nightlife business as well as I have. And so at, various venues, various events, different things, always work on these guys over the years.
Nice. And are you two both from Seattle?
No, originally I was a military brat, so originally from nowhere, but born in Ohio.
And then Quentin, how about you? Are you from Seattle?
Yeah, I'm from Brooklyn originally.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Brooklyn.
Dang.
And then I've lived in Seattle since 95, early 95, late 94, early 95. So
Wow.
I always battle with myself to retain the Brooklynite,
Yeah. And you spent quite a bit of time in New York, so did you ever run into him in Brooklyn? Or?
No, I never knew him.
Although we do have a mutual friend, Vandy.
Yes,
Greg
Vandy.
Right.
Lived in Alphabet City, and I used to stay with him when I go to New York.
Mm-hmm. And Brian, what is your background in DJing? I know I went extensively into Supreme's background on his episode, but how'd you get into it?
Yeah, I used to do some radio stuff in high school, and then post high school and in college I DJ'd and started collecting records, ever since I was a kid with my dad, but not actively buying them until early 90s. And so, and then when I moved to Seattle, I came at about the same time Quentin did in 94, 95. I started DJing drum and bass. I was with the 360 BPM collective. And so I did that for about 5 or 6 years.
Okay. And what club did you start at, or how did that?
I started at the Power Plant and Vinylized.
Okay.
Both were all ages clubs down in Pioneer Square under the viaduct. And then, just started working my way into different things. And then, Quentin was the general manager over at the Showbox, and I used to DJ the Electro Lush Saturday nights there when Showbox actually had 2 rooms in the front bar area.
The Soto one or the
market? Yeah.
Back then there was just one, so it was
Okay.
just Showbox Market. That's how long ago it was.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was just called the Showbox, actually.
Which is the one they keep trying to tear down?
The Showbox Market.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's got an original sprung dance floor in there
Yeah.
from the 20s, and that was those days at the Showbox were some pretty incredible things were happening in town. And then Seattle was really on the touring circuit, so every band came through there. It was a cool time to work there.
And just imagine the Showbox back then, that was actually a nightclub on the weekends.
Yeah.
Okay. What makes something a nightclub versus like a concert venue?
People dancing in front of you.
I feel like the late start has something to do with it too. It's like it's crickets until midnight, and then all of a sudden it's pandemonium. But yeah, the nights that B's talking about, Electro Lush nights, were sort of legendary. I mean, even in their own time, it was just like it would be crazy. I'd roll into work at midnight or 12:30,
Wow.
and make rent in an hour and a half. It was just
What?
insane. And the music was great. Like those guys at Tasty Shows obviously are, super well known and did a bunch of really impactful things here and in other places.
Yeah.
But we were in the same room, I'm sure dozens of times, but we didn't really meet each other until 2003
Dang.
at Viceroy, when I was GM in Viceroy at downtown, which is now Rob Roy. And then I opened Havana in 2006.
And what's Havana?
Havana is a spot over on Capitol Hill, and it's kind of, it's a cocktail. It started out as kind of a cocktail lounge with DJs, very much sort of a hybrid model where a party would sort of erupt at a certain point during the night, and then the party kind of erupted, and it just kept erupting for like 17 years, which is where we're at now. And Brian's been a partner and investor there for since the beginning, and I always like to joke around that. Aside from my mom, he's my favorite investor there, my favorite partner, because he's been so influential in how that place has succeeded over the years. And then, Supreme plays there too, and
hey, there we go.
That's a big part of it as well.
And how did you end up in Seattle again?
I came out here for like a year.
Okay.
I always lived on the East Coast, and so I always thought it'd be cool to live on the West Coast, and Seattle wasn't really even on my like map much. It was just that I had some friends living out here, and I was like, I'll go out there for a year, and then I kept getting sort of better jobs. I started running bars for people, and here I bought a house. It's like I have a son. I'm married, and I'm here.
Yeah.
I am here for sure.
See, and you guys are all entrepreneurs then.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And is that like something that you guys have all like wanted to do since you were kids, or did you guys like feel like you worked normal jobs until you were able to become entrepreneurs, or what was that entrepreneurial journey for each of you?
I think it comes from not having a lot as a kid, and then seeing things that you want to have, and then realizing that sometimes you just got to create that. So at least for myself, I had when I moved to Seattle, I got my first .com job in April of '96, and then I sort of left the internet world in February of 2001, and just started building like what we call brick and mortar businesses. So I had Sal's Barbershop when it was on Olive. I had Boulevard Art Gallery. We started a screen printing business, Do or Die screen printing. Helped support Under the Needle Records through a couple of their releases, and so we were just starting to build like brick and mortar businesses. And then the War Room came out of that. Invested down at the Viceroy where I met Quentin, and then invested in Molly Moon's ice cream. And so like those were all things that we're like trying to create some cultural fabric for the city, and kind of following suit from Tasty Shows. All the stuff that I saw that they were doing that I considered cool, I wanted to be a part of that too.
And have you invested in things before, or are you newer to investing into businesses?
I'm on record label Conception Records.
Yeah,
but,
true.
Pretty much the same thing. He hit the nail on the head. Coming up, and you don't have much. You figure out in life. Like one thing I remember when I was probably close to like 10. A neighbor had a pinball machine, and I wanted it so bad. I wanted one so bad, and I begged my parents, and they're like, never. And I thought things like that were like untouchable. Like I would never have that in my life. And I remember like asking my mom, could we go to eat at Benihana's? She'd say, no way. That's expensive. Yeah. That's way too much. And so, growing up, I remember just working towards my dreams and goals. I wanted to DJ. I wanted to be in the music business, make records. And, hip hop came along, and I fell in love with that. And in 95, I told you on the last podcast, when I quit my job, I was a delivery driver. I used to deliver computers and computer parts. And I quit to start a record label and do music, DJ and do music. Damn. And I never looked back.
I mean, that in itself is an amazing story. 95, like that's.
And I have a really cool pinball machine right now.
I was hoping that was the end of that story.
That's amazing. Wait, so how old were you when you started investing into businesses? Then I feel like.
I'm 52 now, so 20 plus years, 25 years ago.
And is that just like, I guess you just have to save up, or how does that? Because like for me, I'm able to have my own studio now, but it's because I joined like a program, like Seattle Restored. So they're putting in businesses and like up and coming businesses into storefronts, and then the hope is that you make enough money by the time that program ends, you can stay in that space, which is going pretty well for me, by the way, already.
Congrats.
Yeah. But like, if I don't know, I do a lot of cool. Like I DJ and I was a podcast producer, and I'm a podcast studio owner, and I do my best to save, but I can't even.
Well, sometimes that investment is also just your mind share, and so like I mentor probably 10 plus different groups right now, or folks that are whether they have clothing labels or they're content creators, and so. A lot of that stuff to me is like, if you aren't investing downstream, then you're not going to be building the support system upstream for future projects. And so some of those businesses weren't fruitful. I don't think we ever made money in the art gallery. I don't think we ever made money in the barbershop. We sold the barbershop to the barbers that still operate Sal's Barbershop on Pike Street now. But those businesses were very instrumental in building the network that I have access to today. And so
Right.
I met Jake One and Vitamin D and a lot of those guys at that barbershop and being one and nurtured those relationships through that business, even though the business itself wasn't a fruitful business.
Yeah, I think that Brian just touched on this.
Yeah.
You know, the glory and the successes are always what people see. You know, I mean, I can say, you know, I've seen Brian like hustle and you know, try to sand down the front of a business with like a single sanding block. You know, he's a really hard working guy who's willing to get his hands dirty, you know. I've seen, you know, business partners like that, that will just do the things that people don't want to do and fail. Right. But the thing is, I feel like as an entrepreneur, it's like you're not really even following the financial success all the time. You're just following what you want to be, what you want to see in the world around you.
Got it.
And I mean, with the you know, be it a podcast, an art gallery, you know, a record label. I mean, I'm a musician, so it's like, you know, I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars,
Right.
you know, on just putting music out into the world.
Yeah.
And someone may hear it and they may not. Most likely they won't, but that's okay. You know, it creates other opportunities in other ways, like Brian was talking. It creates fabric.
Got it. Okay, that makes. But you should have like an end goal, or your end goal is the thing that's way down the road.
Well, I would say like
Or-
the end goal is life. The end goal is a really interesting life with places and people, places where you want to go and people you want to be around. And I would say that like this place, this room, you know, being able to be involved in a project with Supreme and Brian, for me as someone who loves music, for, you know, since I was 2 or 3, you know, my earliest memories are listening to music.
Yeah.
And so, you know, to be involved with these guys who are, you know, so thoughtful and so talented, and be the focus of it be music and vinyl records and bringing music to people in a different way. I mean, that is success.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. So, Supreme, do you think you guys all have like the same amount of musical knowledge, or do you guys compete in that, or how does that?
No, I'm real crazy with it. But the thing is, kind of like what Quentin said, my earliest memory is also music.
Yeah.
I got a portable record player on Christmas when I was 3 or 4 years old, and like I tell my mom, she ruined me because I don't know what it was. I just loved listening to records. And even like, so it came with like all these children's records, Smokey the Bear, Peter Pan, all this. And she said I just tossed them in the trash and got her James Brown and all her funk and stuff. And that's all I would listen to. And then I remember like getting my first allowance, and I asked my parents to take me to the record store. I don't know why. I've always been into and bought records. But kind of like in the 80s when like Public Enemy came out, and Eric B. and Rakim and stuff like that, and I was recognizing samples and songs. And then that opened me up like crazy to more music. Like I like, say if they sampled like a group called Funk Incorporated. So I go look for that record. And while I'm looking for that one particular record, I find 5 other albums they did I didn't know about. So I just buy them all because I thought,
Wow.
well, if that one's good, they have to have another good one. Let me find out. And so early on, I was just buying a lot of records and a lot of different stuff.
Dang. And Brian, do you probably bought a lot of records too then, yeah?
Nowhere near the volume, or my curiosity is more around certain sounds, you know. So like I've always been really attached to like electro and freestyle and like just certain subgenres of hip hop and, you know, some golden era stuff. But I think Supreme, like, you know, his love and depth and knowledge base for music is, I mean, there's very, very few people that I have interactions with where I could be that challenged. And I think, it's part of why, like him being part of the Shibuya business is kind of paramount. And like, I feel like I've met more people in the last 3 weeks of my life right now currently than I have in 5 years that I would like to have more time with. And it's because I think the fabric that you mentioned, Quentin, earlier, is just, it's music, and like that connective tissue is like, I didn't realize how dynamic it was until, like I'm discovering new artists and new music genres on a weekly basis. And I can't say I've done that in the last 10 years because the algorithm has owned me. And so this is like kind of a break from that.
That's awesome. Cause I feel like certain people, when they reach a certain age, they get stuck in their ways on what type of music they like. So do you think that's just like a mindset, or how? Because that's it's silly, but like I definitely feel like a fear of mine is getting to an age where I stop wanting to learn new music, But like I guess as a music lover, that might not be a silly fear, but that's something that I think about all the time.
Well, I think if you take Supreme's approach, and if you do like an artist and then you go a little deeper on the artist, you'll be really surprised. Like, break out of the algorithm. Don't do this exercise in a streaming app, but just break out and look at liner notes and flip a CD or a record up on the backside and look who was playing the instruments that you kind of heard in that album, and then go deeper that way. Then you're in his world, right? And then I think that lens of us not being old heads. We get that. We get called that all the time. Oh, you guys don't like the new music because you guys are just a bunch of old heads. And I think that, like, I would just challenge a lot of people that feel like, hey, I already know the type of music I like, to just go outside of those boundaries a little bit.
Also, I wanted to say that a song could be 30, 40 years old. If you've never heard it, it's new.
Yeah.
It's new music to you.
Yeah. I could definitely do that way more with music than movies. I feel like for me, I have to stop at the late 80s for movies for whatever reason. But like, yeah, music, I could listen to it.
But it's like Brian said, reading liner notes, which you don't get digitally anymore. Yeah. You can see who played on it, what year they recorded it, where they recorded it, who engineered it. What, if it sounds good to you, like, what else did this guy engineer? And you just go, and it's endless.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then Quentin, what type of music do you make?
Do I make or do I listen to? Or?
You said you're a musician.
Oh yeah. So I didn't hear that. Which is why I'm a musician, which is why I didn't hear you. I would say it's definitely got a garage rock bend to it, but it's very outward looking. So I mean it's pushing. I mean, that's the base of it would be garage rock, but then it's really keyboard heavy, and the guy that I've been playing with for a long time, he's an amazing drummer and just kind of one of these like incredible people who can sit down, who can listen to like Chopin and go sit down at a piano and play it. And he's never had a piano lesson in his life. What? So like, I kind of feel like in that respect, I love being around people that bring something way more than I'm able to offer to any project. I mean, that's why one reason that I love, I love being with these guys on this project is it's like, to be with someone like Supreme, who's got such a massive, not only deep, but very wide, knowledge of music and collecting music and the history of music and all that stuff is like, it's like a lifetime thing, it's great. And to be with someone like Brian, who's like, this optimizer and just makes everyone around him better, including, me, in my opinion, is also, a great thing. So, yeah.
For sure. So I've kind of heard what music inspires them. Like, what music inspires you?
I like everything. So when Supreme was talking, I was thinking about, so outside of the box of what we listen to in the hi-fi room back here. So one thing we haven't played yet for people is classical music. We've played rock music with strings, and we've even played some like kind of experimental modern stuff that has a little bit of strings. But like I have a record here that's a a collection of Beethoven symphonies that belonged to my parents, and it was recorded in 1970, which is the year I was born.
Yeah.
And so I pinched it from them at one point in time. I don't really remember. And I mean, to answer your question briefly, like, I love everything. I listen to every kind of music, and I'm open to listening to everything. But so on this one, so this is it. It's the Beethoven symphonies recorded by the Berlin Philharmonic, which at the time was the greatest, orchestra in the world, conducted by Herbert von Karajan, who's the greatest conductor at the time in Germany, which means they were using the best mics, right? The most coveted, like Neumann, U87s, AKGs, and all those things. Thinking about all the hours that went into this piece of music, and then thinking about how amazing the piece of music is, and then realizing that the person who composed it couldn't actually hear when they composed it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, then you listen to the record on this system, and it's like, whew, all right, this is what it's all about.
That's amazing.
So I love to really try to be present when I listen. And I love classical music. I love jazz. I love lots of different kinds of rock, and I love, a lot of those records. If you thumb through that stack right there, you'd be like, "Good Lord, what's wrong with this guy?" And Brian says that every night.
Amazing. So, Supreme, what is Shibuya? How did this come to be?
Well, traveling and me, traveling and going to Japan, and I stumbled up on record bars. And
break down what a record bar is for people who don't know.
Well, I think Brian can do that probably a little better than me. They're basically hi-fi listening bars, but there's a long history behind them with military, and his parents actually met in one. So that's why I like him to tell the story.
Cool. We'll save that for you next.
But the one that I go to mainly is called JBS. And I guess with his deal, he was just like a record collector. And his wife said, "You got to get rid of these records. Like, we're going to get a divorce, or you got to get rid of these records." So he moved them all into this little space and just opened a bar in there.
Wow.
So he could keep his collection, but made it into a business. I just think that's a funny story.
That's amazing.
There's more history there, but that's my favorite one.
Wow. And it started, Hi-Fi Room start in Japan?
Yes.
Okay, wow. That's awesome. So you've been traveling to Japan, and you came across these bars. And have you Quentin, have you been to a hi-fi bar before that, or?
I've actually never even been to Japan.
Oh wow. Me
so
neither.
I've been to other places in Asia, but it's on my list of places to go. So yeah, I have not.
And then break down what a hi-fi bar is, record bar is.
Well, I mean, there's like probably, a couple different flavors of it right now. And, it's funny, like, since we've had this project open, people keep on sending me different videos of listening rooms. And so you've got sort of the listening room experience, which our hi-fi room is a listening room. So the expectation is for you to be totally present and listen and not talking and listening to an album. In most of those instances, those listening room experiences are the entire album. You have a vinyl bar concept, which JBS falls in that, and he also is the bartender, and so it's more intimate space. You are not really influencing what music is being played. You're a participant in his curation, and so he will go, and he's got a wall of records behind him that he pulls from. He will serve you a drink or ignore you for 10, 15 minutes and just be focused fully on the music. And that's part of the experience. And so that would be sort of the vinyl bar. And then you've got this concept of hi-fi. And then when you go into hi-fi, hi-fi has itself several different flavors. In our room here, we're vintage hi-fi. So this system is a early 70s system with corner Klipschorns paired up with a Marantz 2325, 125 watt two channel unit. And so in the front part of our bar, we have hi-fi, but that's, a Luxman L505 UXII, 200 watt, 100 watts per channel, integrated amp. This is a receiver back here. That's an integrated amp, and we're running it through some classic remakes of the JBL, the 70s JBL L100 speaker. And that experience out there is what I would consider new school hi-fi or like modern hi-fi, and this is vintage. And so there's all these different interpretations of like this business model. Mm-hmm. And so we're sort of playing and straddling both because we have space. But typically in Japan, that this is down a dimly lit alley in the Shibuya district, and the bar could hold 10 people.
Wow.
And that's the experience. Or here we could hold 200 and some odd people here. Yeah. So,
dang.
And I think also it's it's super subjective. Like Brian was talking about. Vintage hi-fi in here and new hi-fi out there, and there'll be a certain number of people who come back here and be like, oh wow, this is the pinnacle of vintage hi-fi, and there'll be other people who will come back here and people that are into hi-fi really are very opinionated. Mm-hmm. And so you'll find for every 12 things that someone compliments you on, you'll find 10 things that they'll criticize you on. And so I think what that means is that as entrepreneurs do, right, you just you have a vision and you stick to it, and you do what you like and what you feel like people are going to respond to as well. So I think back here, what we're trying to really do is, I think on the whole, we are trying to do our own thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're trying to, we're tipping our hat to the JBS. And the listening bars of the world, and be they in Japan, Korea, New York, LA, or wherever. But we're also trying to do we have people take off their shoes when they come back into this room, and that's crazy, But it's it really is a thing that we'd like to do to help people, just to encourage a mental reset, and it's an equalizer, right? Like we're all hanging out in here with our shoes off right now, right? And that is something that just puts you in a different mindset, and it helps you listen to music in a different way. And
just being more present.
Yeah.
So for people who still are a little confused, what does the word hi-fi mean?
Like high fidelity, right? So it's just...
and it could be an analog experience or a digital experience.
Yes.
Here, we're vinyl only, and so you could call us a vinyl bar. That has a listening room and a listening experience. Like my mom and dad met in Seoul, Korea. My mom was a DJ in the late 60s in a vinyl cafe. And so this is, predating maybe, I think maybe these things were happening in concert in Japan and Korea, because it was very military influenced. So you had U.S. Soldiers in both regions, amassing vinyl collections, because that was a medium that you acquired music on. And when you moved back to the States, you had a weight allocation that you had you couldn't go over, or otherwise it would cost you more. I don't even know if you could go over. And so when you're thumbing through all of your personal belongings, one of the pieces that got left behind, just because they're so heavy, was vinyl records. And so where you left your records was usually at the cafe that you went to, listening to records. And so my mom used to play 45s for GIs in a vinyl cafe at request. And so also a different experience than what we do here. You don't request records here, but GIs would request records and then tip the DJ. And I wish people tipped the DJ more, but that's a whole different story.
And let's be honest, who likes getting requested? I hate having
I think my mom also hated it because my dad had terrible taste in music, or what I consider terrible taste in music for what I would have been requesting. My mom grew up on Barry White and soul and funk music as her primary, and my dad was requesting Neil Diamond and Elvis records all the time. Amazing. Good thing he had blue eyes and blonde hair.
So in a vinyl bar, it's definitely more on like curating versus like you can't really mix here, can you? Or how would that work if you're like switching out?
I mean, I
does-
laugh at like I just retired DJing this last year, and so now my DJing is literally needle dropping, and I'm not mixing, but we do have a DJ booth in the front room. We are thinking about how we integrate bring your own vinyl into the bar. We have this room is actually available for rent if someone wanted to take over the music curation and not be using our house collection here. But it always have a room host or someone who's actually needle dropping the records for him because
Nice.
the gear's vintage.
Nice. That's cool. So how have you guys been building out your team for this space? What has that been like?
Well, I mean, as far as the bar staff, or as far as the
Yeah, just everyone like
Well-
employees and everything. Like, how do you like? Is like the process been? Because this is a crazy venture. So I'm guessing that's kind of
there's a lot of moving parts to this one. I mean,
Okay.
I've been doing bars and restaurants and nightclubs for a long time, and this one is a little bit like a Swiss watch. I mean, it's just like there's a lot of things going on at the same time. We're lucky to have a lot of people involved who really know what they're doing. We have a solid GM who has been in the hotel business for a while, and he's been, it's a tough labor market to get really good bartenders and servers, and he's been doing a decent job doing that. I think I shouldn't say decent. I mean, he's been doing a good job doing that. The three of us have a network of people too that we can pull from, and so that's really been helpful. I mean, there's a certain there's somebody who's been working the door at Havana for years who's great, and I just thought she would be great over here, and so she's coming over here to help us out
Nice.
a couple nights a week. DJs, I mean, and booking talent to come through. I mean, that's clearly Supreme's domain.
Yeah.
For sure. And then I think, the programming and figuring out, what we play back here, Brian and I have been doing that with Supreme's help. And I think moving forward, as we're just going to create schedules of like, we'll be playing, maybe we'll be playing like some Swedish art rock on a Wednesday and some DJ Crush on Thursday and, sky's the limit on Friday.
Right.
But I think that'll be all of us really, throwing ideas into a hat and sitting down and having fun picking out records. So yeah.
So Supreme, were you going to say something?
I was going to say on the back end of the project too, it's like we have investor partners that have been sort of following our businesses over the years that have been really instrumental. It's kind of interesting when you've got an investor that could actually give you really good inputs. And so we've got some really good friends that are trusted. And then we have DJ Hunterproof that we didn't even mention. He came up with all of our branding. And Jeff has just been a great partner too, because it's one of these projects where if I was developing logo concepting and stuff for a medicine brand or something like that, I don't know if I would necessarily, I'd probably go to an ad agency. But for this project, he is such a shoe fit, and we didn't even have to do a lot of onboarding of like telling him what the vision was. He was just already plugged in and telling us what our vision was, which was kind of
I think it's safe
thing.
to say that if Jeff lived in Seattle instead of LA,
Yeah.
which is where he lives, I mean, he'd be sitting around the table with us right now.
Yeah, that guy's
He's made
awesome.
such a massive contribution.
Yeah.
Wow. So how has it been booking talent? Like, because this is your space, like, are you performing as well, or what is that like for you?
Yeah, I'm here at the minimum once a month doing a night by myself, but I've been playing with some of the DJs coming in, and we've been bringing. It's funny because it's a listening bar, but we're still bringing world-class DJs in. Even last week when I played, someone came up to me and said, "Man, you're DJing." I said, "Yeah, why?" And they said, "I thought it was a listening bar." They're like, "You're actually mixing and DJing." And it's weird because it's a little different, There's not a dance floor, but we're still bringing the good talent in. And it being vinyl eliminates a lot of people off the top.
So how do you find it? You just through your community, or
I have a large network that
Yeah.
I built over 30 years of being in the business.
That's cool. That's awesome. That's like, do you think Seattle's like ready for something like this, or like, do you like?
Yeah, I think it's way overdue. Honestly,
Okay.
I think a lot of people don't know that they needed it.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know what you thought when the first time you came in.
This was like amazing. I was, yeah.
I feel like everyone that comes in is like, it's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
they just love it. Like, it's different, you know, it's an experience.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you know, like Quentin said, it's a little different mindset when you come into a room like this. Like, I'm so comfortable right now sitting here.
Yeah, this is amazing. See, you can't say anything else but amazing. It's a great experience. That's so. I feel like working with like a lot of like up and coming talent in Seattle, though, it's hard for like audiences to be into like finding artists to listen to or go to their shows or whatever. And I think it's hard to find like audiophiles in Seattle. So how is that hard to like find people that are actually like interested in audio the way you guys are to like come to the bar?
I think that's probably our biggest, not full surprise, but I am very surprised because that is like a niche community. And what we've been finding out is like people that we know very, very well, we also didn't know that they were audiophiles.
Wow.
Like I've got friends, I had a friend, a really good friend and business partner, Rachel, that came in here with her husband and said, "Oh, Brian, we got 4 hi-fi systems at my house."
Wow.
And like I've known her for 10 plus years, and so like it's like I think COVID created a lot of also it revitalized a vinyl, and a whole bunch of different aspects, and we were just forced to be at home with in our own personal spaces and had to sort of re-envision what that experience would be just sitting at home. And I think that like again, music was this thing that just helped us feel safe again because we weren't able to go out and experience music. So you had to like bring it into, I mean, I had dance parties in my living room, watching music festivals virtually, which I just would never do in a normal time. And so, it's been really interesting. The hi-fi or anyone that's into audiophiles, they're finding us. And I think back to what Supreme said, it's overdue. They've been wanting this as part of community. Like that's the piece that's missing. It's like you could be an audiophile in your own space for your whole life, but like being surrounded by other people that like that same genre or artist or experience is what we're finding. And it feels so good when you actually come across those people.
And it's been fun too. Like there's been lots of different, moments back here, right? But there was one in particular. It was maybe the first or second day that we were open, and there was a guy sitting back here, sitting in that seat on the sofa.
Yeah.
And he was just checking stuff out, and he was like, listening to music, and he asked a couple of questions, and then I was down at Hawthorne Stereo, and those guys have been really helpful. Just first of all, they love all sorts of different kinds of speakers and amplifiers and hi-fi equipment. And they've really been helpful in getting us set up and troubleshooting stuff when it comes up. But so I was just down there picking something up, and I hear this guy asking a bunch of questions. Like, I'm trying to get set up in my, And I turn, I'm like, I know that voice. I turn around, I'm like, it's the guy.
Wow.
So he's like now going to like get his stuff dialed in. And I think that like when something as personal as music, which is also a very universal thing. When people get when people feel comfortable knowing that their people will be in a certain place, experience or seeking out something that they all want to experience. I mean, it's a very powerful thing. And then you layer music on top of that, and it just becomes,
a safe space.
It's the safe space, yeah.
Yeah, it's like what you first said about brick and mortar. Like you've made a brick and mortar for this community. So
yeah,
that's awesome. So Quentin, break down this room, like from like the furniture and the aesthetic. How did this all come together?
Sure. So, I love this room, and I never want to leave this room. We were really lucky to work with lots of really generous and talented people putting the room together. So I guess we start with the painting. It's by Christy Hopkins, who's a local artist, and we commissioned this painting from her. It's 135 inches by 74. Wow. So we gave her the dimensions, the palette, the color palette of the rug, and we said, you know, we've been listening to Miles Davis' Kind of Blue as sort of a reference record. Do whatever you want. And Christy's an amazing artist. She's represented by Seattle Art Source, which is a great showroom down in Georgetown. If anybody's looking for, you know, for a great piece for their home, Sarah, who runs it, is wonderful. And then the rug is a hand-knotted rug from Afghanistan. Wow. And so this came out of our friends of ours, my friend Sarah, who works at Driscoll Robbins Fine Carpets. She helped us source this from Kabul, outside of Kabul. Wow. And this probably took, you know, 4 people at least a couple of years of their lives to knot. And it is one reason that we kick off shoes in here as well. Yeah. To preserve, and you know, the piece of art that it is, but also to feel it under your feet. Yeah. You know, right? Like you can really, it's like a real privilege to have that experience, I think. And then our friend Darren has a shop called Finn Urban Design, and that's down in Soto, so right down the road. And he made these lounge chairs and all the bar stools at the front of the business, at the bar and in the showroom. And he made these. There's some poofs. I think they're right here. These guys. Mm-hmm. So he made those, and those are all his design. And he's got a great team. And then there's a bunch of furniture from LA, and that's cool as well. And then the chandeliers came out of Benaroya Hall, actually. That's crazy. So they came out of the founder's room, and they're by Louis Poulsen, which is a very famous lighting company. There are 10 of these in the world, as far as I can tell. Dang. And we have all 10 because they were remodeling, and we're like, we'll take them. You know? Wow. And the only 2 that are hanging on the planet anywhere are in this room. Wow. That's wild. And then how did the walling come to be? Is that like... So the cedar planks on the wall were actually here when we walked in. This space was relatively unused when this was, you know, the previous business was here. And as soon as we walked in here, we knew, we're like, this is a hi-fi room. I mean, this has just got to be a hi-fi room. It's back down. You got to go down this hallway. It's kind of, you know, off to the side. It'll be a nice surprise and delightful when you walk in. And I mean, the thing is that recording studios will go to great lengths and spend a lot of money to get this much, you know, sound absorption and dissolution on a wall, right? And so we walked into it, and it does a great job at treating the room. There's not much treatment, just a bass trap in the corner over there. And we thought it was someone called it a sound sauna back here. So Supreme, what's it like finding like an audience when it comes to like age range? Have you guys seen younger people be interested in vinyl, or do you think there's like a certain age?
Yeah, I was just talking to these guys yesterday. We had a meeting, and I was telling them how there's literally like all ages in here. Of course, you have to be 21 to come in, but they're coming in. It's like literally, and even out, you know, when I'm in record stores, I see a lot of teenagers and a lot of young kids buying records.
That's awesome. So for like newer albums that come out, like maybe like a rap album that is bassy, can these speakers handle like a crazy bass album, or how does that work, and how has like bass evolved in speakers over time?
Oh, we're about to go down a rabbit hole.
I think it's part 2 of this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. Quentin and I were talking about, you know, sort of differences between analog and digital, and I think there's, you know, it depends on who mastered the record when it gets to sort of the final thing before it gets into a format, and if you've got someone that understand or is actually intentionally mastering your record to be in vinyl format, that's a whole different technique than just mastering it for digital consumption. And so like if you've got a record that just came out, I mean, we've been playing Frank Ocean back here, we've been playing The Weeknd, we've been playing DJ Crush, the DJ Crush, because he's such a master technician himself, it sounds so good because the bass response in his production is so good because he's just sort of a master at what he does. And so, like, I would say, like, you could have a new artist that releases on vinyl, and as long as that person was thoughtful enough to have a person to master it that knows how to master the vinyl, it's going to sound amazing back here.
Nice.
Great
answer.
Records with a lot of space in them sound really amazing. I mean, things that, like, good headphone records sound great on these
There it
speakers.
is.
Nice.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's hard to, like, listen to music at home now when you after coming here.
Well, I think the thing that Quentin failed to really talk about when he was telling the story about Hawthorne Stereo was that he just went back there this weekend by appointment and redid his whole home sound
Yeah, I was
system.
getting kitted out. I had to.
We haven't heard the price. We haven't heard the price tag of that.
Out of the bag.
But what's funny about that is I feel that everyone that experiences this room does that.
Mm-hmm.
Every person I know that has been back here has hit me up saying they're going to go buy a hi-fi system for their house.
Wow.
And every DJ that's played wants a Bozak mixer now.
We're just a candy store back here.
Yeah.
But I think, it's helped me too. Like one of the stories I tell, like when new people come back to this room is that, like, I feel like I cheated myself from how I should have been listening to music. And being that I've got so many records and I've been DJing for a couple decades, that I've been just doing it wrong because no one told me the right way, or no, maybe I didn't really do enough research, and I'm mad at myself for that now I know what I need to do, and I've unplugged every speaker cable out of my home system, and I'm going to be right behind you in a couple weeks, I think, at Hawthorne.
I just got to it first.
Yeah. And you invited me too, and I
did. I had a listening room booked there, and I'm like, B, come on, man.
I gently declined because.
Wow. So my final question for each of you guys to answer is, what does Shibuya mean to you guys going forward?
I would say that it means that's a really big question and a really good question. I would say that for me, it means people connecting through music. And that's my hope, is that it could be in this room, it could be when they leave this room. That's kind of my biggest hope for it.
I got one in that same vein. To me, it represents me reconnecting or connecting deeper to my community through music and people that I haven't met yet, and that's I hope for self-fulfilling. Like I want to have a deeper connection to a lot of people that I wouldn't have normally been able to have, but through music.
That's awesome.
Definitely. Yeah, I'd say community, love, and quality.
For sure.
There we go.
Is that our T-shirt right there?
I think that is.
You got it figured out. Awesome. It's been amazing talking to you guys. Thank you for being nice enough to have me do this in your space.
Likewise, right back
It's
at
been
you.
great having
Yeah.
you.
Of course.
Yeah.
So with that, you can find all the information online, I'm guessing, right? You guys have a website, social media.
Yeah, everything is ShibuyaHiFi.com, and all of our socials are Shibuya HiFi.
Cool. There we go. It's been the NAST podcast with
Supreme LaRock.
and
Quentin.
and
DJ Nostalgia BU.
we did it.